In the darkness of a small town, where deadly secrets are slowly rising, a blind girl betrayed, an enemy lurking in the shadows, and a man who cannot turn his back on justice. Once upon a time, in a small town in Georgia, there was a girl named Lyla. Her eyes were blind, but the pain life inflicted on her was even harsher than the darkness she faced every day. She was once a happy child, in the loving arms of her parents. However, a tragic car accident took everything from her. At just 10 years old, she lost both her father and mother and fell into the hands of her uncle Ralph, a greedy and cold-hearted man. Without hesitation, Ralph seized the entire family fortune. Lyla was thrown out of her beloved home, the place once filled with her parents' laughter. She wandered the dusty streets, where once sweet memories remained but were now replaced by scornful glances and harsh whispers. People called her cursed, as if her very presence was the source of every misfortune in the town. The days that followed were long and endless, filled with hunger and loneliness. Every day, she struggled just to find a meal to survive. Her bare feet touched the scorching roads under the burning sun, while her soul endured deep wounds from society's rejection. Yet in the darkness of poverty and suffering, Lyla held on to a tiny glimmer of hope. She told herself that one day, someone would reach out to help her, or perhaps a miracle would lift her from this harsh life. That afternoon, the sky was gloomier than usual. Thick grey clouds blanketed the sky, signaling an approaching storm. Lyla sat on the steps of a dilapidated house, her small hands hugging her thin knees. Her messy hair fell over her gaunt face, and though her eyes saw nothing, they were filled with tangled thoughts. She felt as if the whole world was against her, and despair engulfed her like icy water. Lyla stood up. The decision to go to her Uncle Ralph's house flickered in her mind like a final glimmer of hope. Her hand tightly gripped the old wooden stick, the only item she had left from her parents. Her bare feet carefully stepped on the uneven road, leading toward the large house where Ralph lived. The road to Ralph's house wasn't long, but each of Lyla's steps seemed to drag along her sorrowful past. The wind blew by, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil and decaying leaves. Lyla could feel every small stone under her feet, every scratch on her cracked heels. Sometimes she stopped to listen to the rustling wind through the withered branches, as if they were trying to tell her something. Ralph's house appeared within reach. Even without seeing it, Lyla could sense the grandeur of the place through the scent of oak wood and the creaking of windows in the wind. Her heart pounded heavily. She knew the chance of Ralph helping her was slim, but she had no other choice. Taking a deep breath, Lyla tried to suppress the rising fear in her heart. She knocked on the door, 3 knocks echoing in the silence. A few seconds passed, and the door creaked open. "I'm Lyla," she said softly, her voice trembling. Ralph stood there, a middle-aged man with a scowling face, his cold eyes sweeping over her. He looked her up and down, and a sneer briefly crossed his lips. "Lyla? Why are you here?" His hoarse voice carried a hint of annoyance. I came to ask for your help," Lyla replied, her voice choking. Ralph burst into harsh laughter, the sound cutting deep into Lyla's heart. "Help? You think you have the right to come here and demand that?" Lyla said nothing. She just lowered her head, gripping her stick tightly. Ralph continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your family's fortune was the price I had to pay to take you in. What more do you want? Leave and don't come back." Lyla felt as if every last bit of hope in her heart was crushed. She had no words left to say. Stepping back, she turned and walked away. Her legs trembled, but she tried to steady herself to avoid falling. The wind grew colder, slipping through the tattered layers of clothing she wore. On her way back, tears began rolling down her cheeks, mixing with sweat and dirt. She didn't know what to do next. In her mind, countless questions rushed in. Where should I go? How will I survive? When she returned to the familiar street corner where she often rested every afternoon, Lyla collapsed onto the ground, hugging her knees and sobbing uncontrollably. The pain felt like a knife cutting deep into her heart, endlessly aching. The world around her seemed to sink into silence, leaving only her muffled sobs beneath the gloomy sky. Yet in the depths of despair, Lyla still clung to a faint glimmer of hope. She told herself that no matter how dark it was, she would find a way to endure. But the road ahead remained a mystery, a journey full of thorns and obstacles that she didn't know if she had the strength to continue. On the long road leading to Ralph's house, Lyla stopped under the shade of an old mulberry tree by the roadside. She could feel the cool breath of the evening breeze, yet her heart remained heavy. The dirt road ahead was rough, scattered with small pebbles, resembling her life, full of thorns and hardships. Her hand tightly gripped the old wooden stick, and her bare feet cautiously felt every step, each one slow and hesitant. At that moment, a cheerful and lively voice suddenly called out, "Hey, where are you going? You look like you could use some help." The voice made Lyla freeze. She turned her head toward the sound and immediately sensed the presence of a girl. Maya, as she introduced herself, appeared with a playful demeanor, bright, mischievous eyes, and a confident smile. Maya quickly started a conversation, her words friendly as if they had known each other for a long time. "Life is too boring without friends," Maya said, her tone both encouraging and slightly teasing. Lyla hesitated. Maya's sudden appearance made her feel both relieved and a bit awkward. She wasn't used to being treated kindly, yet she couldn't deny that Maya seemed to bring a sense of understanding. After a few seconds of internal struggle, Lyla slowly nodded, agreeing to let Maya accompany her. The two continued their journey, their footsteps rhythmically echoing on the dirt road. The sound of Maya's shoes blended with Lyla's bare feet, creating a faint melody that merged with the quiet atmosphere of the late afternoon. Lyla said nothing, but doubts still lingered in her mind. She wasn't sure if Maya genuinely wanted to help, or if this was just another cruel joke fate had in store for her. As they neared Ralph's house, the air suddenly grew heavier. The large house loomed before them, like a symbol of wealth but filled with coldness. Lyla felt her heart pounding hard in her chest. She knew what she was about to face, but there was no other way. Maya stepped forward and firmly opened the heavy wooden gate. Before turning back to Lyla, Maya gave an ambiguous smile, full of hidden meaning. The door of Ralph's house creaked open, revealing a man. Ralph, with his heavy build and cold face, stood at the doorway. His eyes glanced over Lyla, showing a moment of confusion, as if trying to recall something, but immediately turned sharp and cold. "What are you doing here?" His hoarse voice was filled with annoyance. "My house isn't a place for someone like you." Lyla trembled, her hand tightening around the wooden stick. She tried to stay calm to speak, but her voice was just a faint whisper. I came to ask for your help. I have nowhere else to go." Ralph raised an eyebrow, his face wrinkling further, as if deepening the creases already carved by time. "Help?" He smirked, letting out a dry chuckle. "Do you think I'm a charity? I already bore the burden of your family's fortune. What more do you want?" Lyla couldn't say another word. Ralph's bitter words were like sharp knives cutting deep into her heart, leaving her speechless. She stood there, frozen, trying to swallow the rising pain in her chest. Standing beside her, Maya silently observed. After Ralph finished speaking, Maya gently placed her hand on his shoulder, as if whispering something only the two of them understood. Ralph turned to look at Maya, and a subtle wink passed between them. Lyla didn't understand the meaning of that gesture, but she knew clearly that there was no hope left for her. She turned away and walked in silence, leaving behind Ralph's mocking laughter and Maya's mysterious presence. The road home felt longer, each step burdened by the weight of the world. The surrounding air suddenly became suffocating, as if the gloomy sky was slowly collapsing. Cold wind slipped through her thin, tattered clothes, weaving through every frayed thread, making Lyla shiver. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt on her face. She didn't cry out loud, but the pain flowed like a quiet river through her soul. Every drop of tear that fell was another shattered piece of her heart. Lyla returned to the familiar corner where she usually rested. She let herself sink onto the cold ground, hugging her knees tightly. The whole world seemed to dissolve into a misty haze, nothing clear, nothing trustworthy. Yet in the depths of despair, Lyla still held onto a faint glimmer of hope. She didn't know what she would do next, but she knew she couldn't collapse. In her heart, a small voice echoed, weak but determined, "I must keep going." On the long road back, the atmosphere grew heavier than ever. Cold winds weaved through the roadside trees, making them sway like ghosts in the gloomy evening. Lyla walked slowly, clutching her old wooden stick, her bare feet cautiously feeling the uneven ground. Behind her, Maya walked with an air of ease, carrying no burden, as if misfortune could never touch her. The sky was overcast, thick clouds blanketing the sky, signaling that something ominous was about to happen. The surrounding space was eerily silent, broken only by the sound of the wind rustling through the dry, withered branches. Suddenly, from afar, the screech of tires pierced the air, sharp and threatening. Lyla froze, her sharp ears catching the strange noise. Before she could process what was happening, a car suddenly sped toward them at a dangerous speed. In that brief moment, Maya quickly jumped aside, escaping the danger. But Lyla, unable to react in time, stood frozen in the middle of the road. A violent crash echoed as the car slammed into them, hurling both to the ground. Lyla was flung far away, her body motionless on the cold ground. Maya, though grazed, quickly sat up, her eyes reflecting something unclear, as if she wasn't afraid but was carefully calculating something. The driver, a young man named Ethan, stepped out of the car, his face pale. Seeing the two bodies on the ground, guilt and panic overwhelmed him. He gasped for breath, trying to steady himself before urgently calling for help. Ethan rushed to Lyla first. She lay motionless, her pale face smudged with dirt, blood seeping from deep cuts. Her eyes were tightly shut, her breath weak, like a candle flickering in the wind. The helplessness and pain etched on her face made Ethan's heart tighten. Turning to Maya, he noticed she was almost unharmed. Maya had already sat up, her clothes a little dusty, but her expression wasn't that of someone who had just survived a serious accident. Her eyes glinted with coldness, her lips pressed tightly together as if hiding something. Ethan paused, staring at her with suspicion, but quickly focused on getting them both into his car and heading to the hospital. Ethan carefully placed Lyla in the back seat, feeling her faint breathing. Her heavy breaths filled the thick air in the car. He glanced at her face in the rearview mirror, the cuts on her skin clear evidence of the pain she was enduring. But what pained Ethan more was the dull, powerless look in her eyes, as if she had grown used to being hurt, both physically and emotionally. Maya sat silently in the passenger seat, showing no concern for Lyla. Her eyes seemed focused on something else, far from the chaos that had just unfolded. Maya's unnervingly calm demeanor unsettled Ethan. He couldn't understand how someone who had just escaped an accident could remain so composed. The air in the car grew suffocating. Every time Ethan glanced at Maya through the mirror, his suspicion deepened. Something about her wasn't right. She was too calm, too detached, as if the accident hadn't affected her at all. Upon arriving at the hospital, Ethan immediately called for medical staff. Lyla was placed on a stretcher and rushed inside. He watched as her figure slowly disappeared down the long hallway, his heart heavy as if weighed down by a massive stone. He could sense pain not only from her physical wounds, but also from the quiet resignation in her frail movements. Maya followed slowly behind, her eyes lazily scanning everything around her. Ethan noticed she made no attempt to help or show any concern for Lyla. Instead, she simply observed, like a spectator watching a play she wasn't part of. Ethan paused at the hospital entrance, arms crossed, watching Maya. He clearly felt conflicted. Part of him wanted to believe Maya was just a coincidental witness, but another part urged him to dig deeper. Her presence didn't seem to fit this situation. Questions began to swirl in Ethan's mind. Who was Maya really? Why was she so unnervingly calm? Was she somehow involved in this accident, or was there something else he hadn't uncovered? Ethan tried to push aside those thoughts to focus on Lyla, but an uneasy feeling clung to him. He knew this wasn't just a simple accident. In this story, Maya didn't seem to be the one needing rescue, but rather the one quietly holding the key to unfolding events. As Lyla was taken into the emergency room, Ethan stood outside, his eyes fixed on Maya, who leaned casually against the wall with a faint, indifferent smile. The cold air in the hospital hallway seemed to deepen the suspicion in his heart. Lyla was fighting through her pain inside that room, while Maya appeared to be hiding a secret Ethan had yet to uncover. In the heavy silence of the hospital, Lyla lay motionless on the stark white bed. Her pale face was covered with bruises and scratches that marked her fragile skin. Under the dim yellow light, her half-closed blind eyes reflected a pain that extended beyond her physical body. Everything had happened so quickly. To Lyla, the world felt shrouded in a thick fog of pain and exhaustion. Maya stood beside the bed, her gaze cold and calculating. She didn't look at Lyla, but instead let her eyes scan the room, like someone assessing how to take control. Her face showed no real concern, replaced instead by a perfect mask of determination. Striding toward the doctor's desk, Maya took a deep breath and spoke firmly. "Doctor, I am the only one taking care of Lyla. She has no other family, so I demand to take her home immediately." The doctor, an elderly man with eyes heavy with worry, paused his hand over the medical file and looked up at Maya. His brows furrowed and suspicion flickered in his gaze. "She's seriously injured," he said, his voice thoughtful. "We need to keep her here for further observation. Her condition is still unstable." Maya interrupted, her tone turning sharper. "No one understands her condition better than I do. Lyla needs to be in a familiar environment. I assure you, I can care for her better than anyone here." Her intense gaze and unwavering attitude made the doctor hesitate. Her cold confidence pressured him into reluctantly agreeing. He sighed, scribbling something in the medical file, before looking back at Maya. "Fine, but you need to sign a liability form. Lyla must be carefully monitored, and if there's any sign of complication, you must bring her back immediately." Maya nodded, her lips curling into a faint smile. Under the dim light, that smile looked as sharp as a blade, chilling the air in the room. Meanwhile, Ethan stood quietly at the end of the hallway, his eyes fixed on Maya. His brows were deeply furrowed and his face was filled with suspicion. He had been watching Maya since the accident, and the more he observed, the clearer the irregularities in her behavior became. Ethan stepped forward as Maya began preparing to take Lyla away. He stood firmly in front of her, his voice calm but resolute. "I think we need to reconsider this decision. Lyla needs more medical treatment. Taking her home now might not be safe." Maya turned to Ethan, her eyes glinting with a cold light. Her stance remained firm, and her voice carried an unyielding force. "You know nothing about Lyla. She's been through enough, and I am the only one who can help her. You have no right to interfere." Ethan stayed silent, but the suspicion in his heart grew stronger. He realized Maya's insistence wasn't just about protecting Lyla. It seemed as if she was trying to control everything. Something was very wrong with her behavior. As Maya led Lyla out of the hospital room, Ethan remained still, watching their every step. Lyla appeared weak and helpless, her small frame swallowed by the hospital blanket. Maya, in stark contrast, was composed, as if everything was unfolding exactly as she had planned. Questions surged in Ethan's mind. He couldn't comprehend why Maya was so determined. Her excessive confidence, her cold demeanor, and her complete lack of concern for Lyla all unsettled him deeply. Ethan walked to the reception desk, asking for information about Lyla. He knew something wasn't right, and if he didn't act, the consequences could be severe. The dim hospital lights highlighted the determination in his eyes. He silently vowed that no matter who Maya was or what her intentions were, he wouldn't let Lyla suffer any further harm. The hospital hallway grew quieter as Maya and Lila's figures faded into the distance. Ethan stood still, his heart heavy with unease. He knew this wasn't just a story of coincidence. It was a mystery he needed to unravel. In an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, the night cloaked everything in darkness. Only the faint light of the moon filtered through the cracks in the decaying roof. A cold, oppressive air filled the space, as if squeezing every breath. Maya, now stripped of her friendly facade, stood in the middle of the room with a cold, sharp gaze. In her hand was an old phone, its dim screen casting a pale glow on her emotionless face. Maya dialed a familiar number, her fingers moving swiftly and precisely over the keypad, like someone who had done this countless times before. When the line connected, her voice rang out, calm and cutting. "The shipment has arrived," Maya said, each word carefully emphasized. "She will be the most valuable piece in this batch." Pausing briefly, Maya's eyes scanned the room, ensuring no intrusions. The surrounding silence was so thick that only the distant hum of insects could be heard. She continued speaking, her tone steady and cold, as if everything was under her control. Ending the call, Maya smirked slyly, full of calculation. She slipped the phone into her pocket, her eyes sweeping across the room once more to confirm that everything was ready for the plan in motion. Outside, Ethan hid in the shadows, watching every move through a crack in the rotting wall. His suspicion of Maya had grown since the accident. Every action, every word she spoke had left him with a lingering unease. Now, hearing Maya's words, all his doubts were confirmed. Ethan silently followed Maya's movements. Her figure slipped through the dark hallways of the abandoned house, leading to a larger room. There, Chief Bryant appeared, a tall, hulking man with a scarred, dark face and piercing eyes, the look of someone accustomed to the darkness of crime. Bryant sat in a worn-out armchair, his legs casually propped up on the table, wearing a smug expression. Maya approached without hesitation and pointed toward Lyla, who lay motionless on a wooden chair against the wall. Lyla appeared small and fragile, her hands bound, her pale face and blind eyes unaware of the danger surrounding her. "She'll do well," Maya said coldly. Bryant nodded, a wicked grin spreading across his face. That moment struck Ethan like a knife to the heart. Rage and pain flared within him, uncontrollable. Everything he had witnessed made it clear. He could no longer stand by. Lyla needed to be saved, and he wouldn't let her fall into their hands. Ethan took a deep breath and charged forward with all his resolve. He kicked the decaying wooden door open with force, the loud crash piercing through the stillness, startling both Maya and Bryant. Bryant snapped around, his arrogant face briefly showing surprise before hardening. Ethan gave them no time to react. He quickly pulled out his phone and called the police. "Send in backup, now!" he commanded, his voice firm and authoritative. Within minutes, the blaring sirens of police cars shattered the silence of the night. Officers stormed into the house, flashlight beams cutting through every corner. Shouts, hurried footsteps, and authoritative commands filled the air. Bryant, with no escape, was subdued on the spot, his face twisted with anger. Yet the confidence in his eyes had vanished. Maya, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, seized the chaos as a chance to escape. She slipped into a dark corner, her eyes darting around, searching for an exit. Ethan noticed her fleeing but couldn't tear himself away from Lyla. He knew ensuring her safety was his top priority. Ethan rushed over and untied Lyla. As he touched her small, cold hands, he felt the pain and exhaustion she had endured. Lyla weakly lifted her head, her clouded eyes turning toward him. Though she couldn't see, a faint glimmer of hope sparkled within them. "You're safe now," Ethan whispered, his deep, gentle voice soothing her fear. As Lyla was carried outside, the flashing lights of police cars illuminated her pale face. Ethan's gaze followed Maya, who had vanished into the night. A sense of incompletion weighed on him, as though part of his responsibility remained unfinished. Capturing Bryant, was only the beginning. Ethan knew Maya was the key to everything, and he wouldn't stop until he found her. But at this moment, ensuring Lyla's safety was all that mattered. The abandoned house slowly fell silent as everyone departed. Ethan, his eyes fixed on the distant darkness, told himself that this battle was far from over, but he was ready to face it, for Lyla and for the justice she deserved. The abandoned house now lay in an eerie silence. The flashlights of the police swept through every corner, illuminating the decaying walls as if trying to expose all the crimes that had taken place there. Chief Bryant, the notorious human trafficker, was escorted outside with a cold expression. Yet there was still a hint of arrogance in his eyes, as if an important piece of the plan was still out there. Ethan stood in the middle of the crumbling room, feeling as if his heart had been torn apart. His eyes were fixed on the slightly open window, Maya's escape route. Her figure, like a fleeting ghost, left a sense of unease and incompleteness in Ethan's mind. She wasn't just a fugitive. She was the key to unlocking the truth behind everything. He sighed deeply, his hands clenching into fists. Outside, the sound of police sirens gradually faded, but in Ethan's mind, the battle was far from over. Part of him wanted to chase Maya immediately, but another part grounded him in reality, where Lyla needed him more than ever. In the corner of the room, Lyla sat curled up on the floor, her small body appearing even more fragile under the dim light. Her face was blank, emotionless, and her blind eyes stared into the void. She seemed frozen by fear and confusion. Everything that had just happened, from Maya's betrayal to Chief Bryant's scheme and Ethan's dramatic rescue, felt like a blurry nightmare between reality and illusion. Ethan approached and knelt beside Lyla. He gently took her cold hand, feeling both her fragility and resilience. "It's over now, Lyla. Chief Bryant has been arrested. I promise, from now on, I won't let anyone hurt you," he said, his deep, warm voice carrying both remorse and determination. Lyla didn't respond. She just sat there, letting silent tears fall onto her dirt-streaked cheeks. Inside her, a storm of emotions raged. Pain, fear, but also a faint flicker of hope. Ethan carefully helped Lyla to her feet. Her small frame leaned against him like a fledgling bird barely surviving a storm, too afraid to believe she was safe. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his gaze drifting toward the dark sky beyond. "We'll start over from here," Ethan silently vowed. But deep down, he knew the truth was far more complicated. Maya was still out there, and she certainly wouldn't stop. Could he protect Lyla from the dangers that lay ahead? Did he have the strength to face the shadows still hidden in this story? The atmosphere in the house slowly eased, but tension still simmered within Ethan. He knew this journey was far from over, and every step forward would be a new battle. Lyla's story wasn't just about survival. It was a profound reminder of compassion and courage in the darkest times. Sometimes life throws us into trials that seem impossible to overcome. But with faith and the help of those willing to stand by us, we can find light in the darkness. Despite betrayal and pain, Lyla was a testament to the inner strength within every human being, the ability to rise above circumstances and grasp hope, even when everything seems lost. And Ethan, though imperfect, showed us that courage isn't always about grand gestures, but sometimes about simply not abandoning those who need us most. This story is only the beginning. Maya remains free, and the danger she carries is still an unsolved mystery. Can Ethan protect Lyla from the ghosts of the past? Will the truth behind Maya and Chief Bryant be revealed? What do you think Maya will do next? How do you think Ethan will face this challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter of this story. We'll be back with more thrilling developments and valuable life lessons you won't want to miss.